Imagine a band that asks you to be patient, like really patient. We're talking years sometimes.
Mm.
Well, sometimes over a decade between albums.
Yeah, it's kind of unheard of, isn't it?
Totally. Yet when they finally deliver, it feels less like just dropping new music and more like, I don't know, an event, an
More,
invitation.
right, packed with layers, art, philosophy, this really complex sound.
Yeah.
It rewards you for leaning in.
Exactly. And the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Their dedication isn't just about listening. It feels more like decoding, like a shared puzzle.
It's fascinating, actually, how they've built this whole career by basically ignoring conventional wisdom, defying the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And they've fostered this incredible level of trust, this intellectual connection with their audience. It's really rare today. They haven't just made songs, they've kind of cultivated this entire world.
And that world belongs to Tool. So welcome to a deep dive into a band that's truly unlike any other. We're using the sources you've provided us, articles, fan guides, some really deep notes basically as our map today.
Yeah, digging into the good stuff.
Our mission? Well, we want to explore their origins, try to unravel some of those layers of mystery they weave so carefully, understand the fiercely loyal community that follows them, and hopefully uncover some details that even, longtime fans might find themselves saying, wait, I didn't know that.
Yeah, get past the common knowledge.
Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to becoming truly well-informed about one of rock's most singular, most demanding horses. All the insights, the details, the stories we're going to share, they come directly from the material you shared with us.
Which lets us, bypass the surface stuff and really get into the specifics. Their unique journey, the artistry that defines them at, well, pretty much every turn.
Okay. And before we spiral out, as they might say, into the depths of Tool, this exploration is brought to you by a community that really lives and breathes this dedication we're talking about. BlessThisCommunity.com.
Yeah, the fan page. Long time running.
A long time, since 2001.
Oh.
A long-time fan page that's been nurturing the world of Tool and Perfect Circle fans. They get the weight, they get the passion.
They definitely do.
They're the kind of community that keeps that fire burning between albums, sharing hilarious memes, the kind only another fan would really get, incredible fan art, and just unexpected surprises that celebrate that deep connection fans have.
It's a whole ecosystem.
It really is.
Yeah.
You can show your support, become part of that group by subscribing to their Facebook page. And for merch, Tool stuff, Perfect Circle stuff, concert tickets when they happen, and just a whole lot more celebrating the unique culture around these bands. Check out their website, blessthiscommunity.com.
It's that kind of shared, dedicated fan energy that really fuels a band like Tool,
It absolutely highlights the power of that community they've built. It really does.
For sure.
Okay, so let's unpack this then right from the beginning. Our first chapter, let's call it The Crucible, formation in early years, roughly 1990 to 93. Who were these four musicians? And how do they end up converging in that very specific scene of late 80s Los Angeles?
Well, if you look at where they came from individually, it starts to make sense why their sound was so different from everything else happening in LA then.
Yes.
You had Maynard James Keenan,
Right,
who wasn't your typical rock frontman cliche. He came from Ohio,
right.
served in the Army, which is already pretty unusual, right?
Yeah, definitely not the standard path.
Then art school, Kendall College of Art and Design. And his path wasn't even straight to music after that. He did interior design, managed a pet store, just all these different jobs before really focusing on music. That kind of diverse life experience seems key to his perspective later.
Army, art school, pet store. Yeah, that's not the Sunset Strip playbook at all. And Danny Carey on drums.
Danny's background is crucial. Rooted deeply in jazz, he came from Kansas, and he'd already worked with artists as varied as Carole King
Wow.
and the kind of comedy rock band Green Jello. So his approach wasn't just limited by rock conventions. It was technical, rhythmically super complex, pulling from totally different traditions.
Which, looking back now, makes total sense given the rhythms he ended up creating for Tool.
Absolutely. Adam Jones on guitar, though, he brought a different kind of artistry, didn't he?
Totally different. Adam moved from Illinois, strong foundation in visual arts. And what's really significant is his work in movie special effects at Stan Winston Studios,
Stan Winston, like creature effects legend.
the one and only. He worked on huge films, Jurassic Park, Terminator 2. This wasn't just a side gig. His understanding of sculpting, design, practical effects. It fundamentally shaped Tool's entire visual identity. The videos, the stage design, the album art, it's all connected.
You can absolutely see that thread running through everything they do visually. And the original bassist, Paul D'Amour.
Paul came down from Washington State, And interestingly, he was originally a guitarist, switched to bass specifically for Tool. His playing gave them that really heavy foundational low end that defined their initial kind of raw sound on those early recordings. So you've got these four really distinct individuals, each bringing something very different to the table. How did they even find each other in that chaotic LA scene?
Yeah.
Late 80s, early 90s, it was still clinging to glam metal. Grunge was just starting to bubble up.
Well, they were deliberately looking for something different. They didn't fit in, and they didn't want to fit in. They wanted to combine that, sheer heaviness of metal, but with more complex structures, weird time signatures,
Yeah.
a sound you couldn't just easily label.
And the way they actually connected feels almost accidental, serendipitous in parts.
It kind of does, yeah. Adam met Maynard through Tom Morello, from Rage Against the Machine. They actually knew each other from high school back in Illinois.
No way.
Yeah. And Adam was also connected to the Green Jello scene, and Maynard ended up moving into this shared loft space with some of the Green Jello guys. It was like this communal hub for musicians.
The real petri dish,
Yeah.
kind of. And Danny just happened to be living next door. Seriously.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Almost too perfect, right? Danny lived next door to Maynard. He initially just started filling in at rehearsals when other drummers they were trying out didn't show up. Danny himself said he kind of felt sorry for them, but his skill was just immediately obvious. Blew them away. He was the missing piece they didn't know they were looking for. Paul D'Amour then completed the lineup, made that switch to bass, and they started practicing seriously in 1990, just developing their sound through hours and hours of jamming.
It started as maybe a side project, but they clearly saw the potential pretty quickly. And the name, Tool. It's so blunt, so simple, especially for that era of band names.
It's layered, which is, very Tool. Danny gave this kind of tongue-in-cheek explanation back in '94, linking it to something called lacrimology, the study of crying.
Right, I remember hearing about that. Sounds like them.
Exactly, an early example of them just cultivating that mystique, creating these slightly bizarre, maybe fictional narratives around themselves, adding that layer of what does it really mean?
Keeping you guessing.
But a more direct interpretation, and one that really fits their themes, is that the music itself is a tool. For personal growth, for understanding yourself, processing difficult stuff. It connects to that whole idea of human evolution being tied to using tools.
And the bluntness of the name itself was kind of a statement.
Oh, absolutely. Compared to the often, over-the-top or kind of cliche band names back then, Tool was stark. Direct, almost confrontational in how simple it was. It immediately signaled they weren't playing by the standard rules.
So before they even got signed, they put out their own demo.
The 72826 demo, recorded December 91. And a fun little detail for fans. 72826 spells Satan on an old phone keypad.
Of course it does.
Right. It had early versions of songs that showed up later, Cold and Ugly Hush, Part of Me, even Sober. It showed the core elements were already there. Heavy, technical, intense lyrics.
And they didn't just give it away, right? They sold it at shows.
Yeah, they treated it like a proper release for the fans they were already gathering. Showed confidence, and it worked. That unique sound, plus the loyal live following they were building, got attention fast. They signed with Zoo Entertainment, a BMG subsidiary, remarkably quickly, like within 3 months of really getting going. Zoo was hunting for alternative acts after grunge exploded, and Tool's sound, which wasn't really metal or grunge, was exactly what they needed. Different.
Their first official release then was the Opiate EP, March '92. Sylvia Massey producing.
And they were really strategic with this EP. They picked their heaviest, most aggressive songs. Why? To establish themselves firmly in the metal scene, even though, as Adam Jones said later, they didn't fully see themselves just as a metal band. It was about making a really powerful first impression.
Let's dig into some of those Opiate tracks, because you can really hear the foundations being laid.
Oh yeah, you hear those early trademarks clearly. Sweat opens with that signature tension, the building dynamics, dealing with anxiety. Hush, that became their first music video. The anti-censorship anthem, remember? With the parental advisory stickers literally over their mouths.
Yeah, iconic.
And you get the full range of Maynard's vocals there, from that quiet intensity right up to the screams.
Part of me is just pure grinding heaviness.
Exploring emotional detachment, the parts of yourself you kind of lose or push away. And the live tracks, Cold and Ugly and Jerk Off, recorded right there at the Jello Loft, they capture that raw, early live energy, plus that willingness to tackle societal stuff head on, even back then.
And the title track, Opiate. pretty direct.
Yeah, a clear nod to Karl Marx's line about religion being the opiate of the masses, questioning organized religion as a form of control. And then that hidden track at the end, the Gaping Lotus Experience,
Well, that
that weird experimental atmospheric piece that was like a little breadcrumb, a hint of the more progressive, more ambitious directions they were already thinking about and would definitely pursue later.
So by the end of that EP, what were the core Tool elements they'd really locked down?
You had that blend of raw intensity and serious technical precision, lyrical depth that was challenging, maybe even uncomfortable, a willingness to hide things, add layers for fans to find, and a clear focus on distinctive, integrated artwork. The essential blueprint for Tool was definitely in place.
And they built their reputation the hard way, didn't they? Just relentless live shows.
Absolutely. Slogging it out in LA clubs, the Roxy, the Whiskey A Go-Go. Their focus was purely on the energy, the intensity of the music itself. Maynard often performed bare-chested back then, quite different from his later stage personas.
Right.
They toured constantly, opening for bands like Rollins Band, Fishbone, Rage Against the Machine, getting in front of different crowds. Word of mouth was everything. Fans who saw them live became like evangelists, sharing bootlegs, dragging their friends to the next show.
That grassroots thing seems so fundamental to how they built that incredibly loyal fan base, right from the absolute start. The Hush video, directed by Ken Andrews from Failure, that was their first real visual statement out there.
And it was stark, right? Black and white, conceptual, focused on that censorship message with the literal stickers. It wasn't some flashy, typical rock video. MTV played it, but mostly on shows like 120 Minutes, giving them that crucial first taste of wider exposure.
Okay, so then came the big one. Their first full-length album, Undertow, April 1993. Still with Sylvia Massey.
This was a huge step up. You hear significant growth, more dynamic songwriting, much more sophisticated arrangements. They recorded at Grandmaster Studios and really started establishing that methodical approach that became their standard, patient, deliberate, getting every detail right.
And it was commercially successful, which is pretty amazing considering how challenging the album actually is.
Remarkably successful. Peaked at #50 on Billboard, which is decent, but it went on to sell over 3 million copies in the US alone. Triple platinum. For an album with content this dark, this complex, that was a major achievement back then.
Let's unpack some of the key tracks on Undertow that really show this evolution.
Intolerance kicks it off with just crushing heaviness, exploring prejudice. Prison Sex is probably the most controversial one on there. It deals directly with cycles of abuse, Maynard singing from the perspective of someone trapped in that pattern. It's lyrically incredibly deep and musically complex, a big leap in their songwriting.
Sober is the one, though. That's the song that really broke them into the mainstream, right?
Absolutely. Built on that unforgettable hypnotic bass riff from Paul D'Amour. It's often read as being about addiction, sure, but more broadly, it feels like it's about confronting uncomfortable truths, facing reality, maybe losing innocence. Its structure, while still heavy, was maybe a bit more accessible than some other tracks, which helped it connect.
And the story about Henry Rollins on bottom, losing a poker game.
Huh. That's the band legend, yeah. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But his contribution is intense. That song's about hitting rock bottom, but maybe finding something foundational or useful down there.
Crawl Away always felt like such a heavy exploration of feeling stuck, emotional detachment.
The grinding, almost mechanical rhythm really reinforces that feeling, doesn't it? The difficulty of escaping toxic situations. Swamp Song has that deep atmospheric groove, linking environmental pollution with a kind of spiritual contamination. And the title track, Undertow, feels like the emotional core, that feeling of being pulled under by forces you can't control.
And 4 Degrees. What's the meaning behind that title? Is it temperature?
Yeah, exactly. It refers to 4 degrees Celsius, the temperature at which water is densest. They use that scientific metaphor to explore different psychological states, different levels of being, weaving it into these really complex rhythms and structures. And Flood is just this massive cathartic closer, suggests cleansing, renewal, building to this incredibly powerful climax.
And then there's Disgustipated, that 15-minute track with the bizarre carrot story.
Classic Tool weirdness, a prime example of them just challenging expectations. On the surface, it's this odd critique of extreme vegetarianism via this rambling anecdote, but it's also 15 minutes of atmospheric experimentation. It really tests the listener's patience, almost dares you to stick with it.
Sober really was the gateway drug for so many fans, myself included. And the music video by Adam Jones and Fred Stuer, that disturbing stop-motion figure.
It was incredible, so distinctive, so artistic. It immediately stood out from everything else on MTV at the time. Its quality got its significant airplay, especially on shows like 120 Minutes. It even won Billboard's Best Video by a New Artist. But crucially, after its success, the band actively pushed back against pressure to write more commercial songs like it. That really solidified their commitment to artistic integrity above all else.
At Lollapalooza in '93, that seems like it was a crucial moment for their live reputation.
Oh, it was massive for them. They started on the second stage, but were quickly moved to the main stage, purely because of the sheer power and intensity of their performances. It put them on bills alongside huge names like Primus, Alice in Chains, Rage Against the Machine. It cemented their place in that whole alternative music landscape.
And this is where the connection with comedian Bill Hicks really started to deepen, wasn't it?
Absolutely crucial connection. Bill Hicks opened for them on several dates during that Lollapalooza tour. His philosophical comedy, his biting social criticism, his constant questioning of authority, it resonated incredibly deeply with Maynard and the whole band, really. Hicks even introduced them on stage at the final LA date of the tour. His influence would become even more explicit and important later on.
They definitely faced some challenges during this early period too, though. It wasn't all smooth sailing.
For sure. Censorship was a big one right away. The Undertow album artwork, with those nude sculptures Adam Jones made, caused major retailers like Walmart and Kmart to just refuse to stock the album.
How did they respond to that?
Their response was classic Tool. They released an alternate version with just a giant barcode on the cover, a direct, sarcastic jab at the whole situation.
Perfect. They also had to navigate the music industry suddenly expecting another sober.
Which they fiercely resisted. Plus, the constant media misinterpretations always being pigeonholed as just metal or just grunge when they saw themselves as something else entirely. And just the internal pressures that come with sudden, unexpected success and the demands of constant touring.
But by the end of 1993, despite those challenges, they had really established their core approach, their identity.
They absolutely had. That seamless integration of visual art, thanks to Adam's background, the album art, the videos, it all felt like one piece. That commitment to mystique over celebrity, actively avoiding personal fame to keep the focus squarely on the art. The technical excellence that always served the emotional expression of the songs, never just showing off. And that intellectual engagement lyrics and concepts pulling from philosophy, psychology, spirituality, they were already a significant, unique force, building this solid reputation for uncompromising integrity.
Which leads us perfectly into our next segment, Ænima Rising Evolution and Recognition, covering roughly 1994 to 1996. They kept up that relentless touring schedule after Undertow, right?
They did, nonstop through 94, 95. It was essential for building that incredibly passionate fan base purely through the power of the live performance. Their shows were intense, focused, not really theatrical yet, just pure musical energy. They toured globally, doing headline shows in smaller venues and opening for giants like Nine Inch Nails and Rollins Band and bigger ones, really expanding their reach.
And the Prison Sex single and video continued to be a source of controversy for them.
Yeah, released as a single in '94. Adam Jones directed the video again, and it was incredibly disturbing. Using stop motion to tackle the subject of abuse cycles head-on, it faced significant censorship. MTV reduced its airtime, channels like Much Music in Canada banned it completely. But the band stood firm, defending its artistic intent to explore psychological trauma. It just reinforced their reputation for challenging content and refusing to back down.
Then came a really significant moment. The only lineup change in Tool's entire history.
Yeah.
Bassist Paul D'Amour departed in September 1995.
Yes, citing creative differences, which is often the catch-all phrase, right? Paul apparently wanted to pursue playing guitar in other projects, which he did later with bands like Lusk and Fearsome Engine. The band always maintained the split was amicable.
His bass playing was so distinctive on Undertow, though, that heavy, grounding presence. Losing him must have forced a shift in sound as they looked for a replacement.
It definitely did. Paul's aggressive, often riff-based style really defined that early low end. Finding someone who not only fit musically but also creatively was crucial, especially as they were consciously pushing into more complex, progressive territory. That search eventually led them to Justin Chancellor, the bassist from the British band Peach.
And they knew Peach from touring together, didn't they?
They did. Peach had opened for Tool on a European tour back in '93, '94. And what's fascinating, a great piece of trivia, is that Justin had actually gotten up on stage and played sober with Tool as a guest during a show in London before they even asked him to join permanently.
Wow, so they kind of had a live audition without even realizing it.
Exactly. According to interviews, Justin initially hesitated. He felt loyal to a new band his friends were forming after Peach broke up, but ultimately he knew joining Tool was an opportunity he just couldn't pass up.
And his style was quite different from Paul's, wasn't it?
Oh, very much so. Justin brought a more melodic, more fluid, almost hypnotic bass style. It was less about just holding down the root and more about weaving complex lines within the rhythm section. His background in British alternative rock also added some new influences, opening up different rhythmic and harmonic possibilities just as they started writing for Ænima.
So the writing and recording for Ænima began in 1995, with Justin now integrated into the band.
And it was a deeply collaborative process from the start. They spent months just writing and rehearsing in a warehouse space before they even set foot in a proper studio. That patient, meticulous approach was really becoming ingrained in how they worked. And they chose David Bottrell as producer.
Known for King Crimson, Peter Gabriel.
Exactly, which was a clear signal, right? They were intentionally moving towards more complex, progressive sounds.
Recording took months, different studios.
Yes, at Ocean Way and The Hook in Hollywood. It was apparently a painstaking process. They were pushing their own limits in terms of complexity, longer songs, constantly shifting time signatures, incredibly dense arrangements. And Justin had to adapt quickly to their very collaborative, jam-based writing method.
Ænima was released October 1st, 1996. The title itself is a classic Tool blend of concepts, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's perfect wordplay. Ænima, from Carl Jung's concept of the feminine aspect of the male psyche, blended with enema, cleansing, it perfectly reflects the album's core themes. Purging negativity, dealing with societal decay, undergoing this kind of harsh cleansing process for personal growth and evolution.
The album structure feels very deliberate too, with 15 tracks including all those interludes.
Those interludes aren't just filler, are they? They create flow, build atmosphere. They make the album feel like one cohesive journey, not just a random collection of songs. And musically, it's just a massive leap from Undertow. Much more complex, progressive structures, constantly changing time signatures, longer, more ambitious instrumental sections.
Okay, let's deep dive into some of these iconic tracks. Stinkfist opens it and immediately grabs your attention, partly because of the controversy around the title itself.
Right. It deals with themes of desensitization, the idea that we need increasingly extreme experiences to feel anything in this oversaturated world. MTV famously censored the title, calling it track #1 on air.
I remember that.
But it still became a hit single. It really questions how numb we've all become. Then you have Eulogy, which is this really sarcastic tribute, widely interpreted as being aimed at a false prophet figure, maybe L. Ron Hubbard, maybe someone else, basically critiquing spiritual exploitation and leaders who build followings through deception.
Each feels like a really raw, intensely personal track.
It really does. It's often linked to themes of betrayal, the difficulty of processing disappointment in a really close relationship. It builds beautifully from these quiet, almost fragile passages to just explosive emotional release. It's powerful.
In 46 and 2, there is so much packed into that one song. It feels like a cornerstone of their philosophy.
It really is. It ties directly into Jungian psychology, specifically the concept of integrating your shadow self, confronting and incorporating the darker, often rejected aspects of your own personality to become whole. It also links to these esoteric theories about human evolution, the idea of evolving beyond our current genetic makeup, 46 chromosomes plus 2 sex chromosomes, using that as a metaphor for transcending limitations. And musically, Justin Chancellor's bass line here is absolutely iconic. It immediately showcases his more melodic, driving style and how perfectly it fit within the band.
That bizarre answering machine message to Harry Manback. What's that about?
It adds this layer of surreal humor, doesn't it? But it also fits the album's broader themes of communication breakdown, human frustration, just weird interactions. And then you have Hooker with the penis.
Not subtle.
Not subtle at all. It's their very direct, very aggressive response to accusations that they were selling out after the success of Undertow and Sober. It's a fierce defense of their artistic integrity and a harsh critique of the hypocrisy of those critics.
And D. von Satan is famous for its little trick.
The ultimate misdirection, it sounds incredibly menacing, right? The intense martial music, the German vocals, but the lyrics, they're literally just a recipe for hash cookies.
No way, seriously.
Seriously, it's a brilliant piece of conceptual art commenting on how language, tone, and presentation can make something completely innocent sound sinister. Classic Tool. just playing with perception.
Push It feels like another huge emotional peak on the album.
Absolutely. It explores destructive relationships, that constant draining push and pull dynamic.
Yeah.
Musically and vocally, it builds to one of Maynard's most raw and powerful performances on the record, mirroring the lyrical turmoil. And then, of course, the title track, Ænima. This is where that Bill Hicks connection becomes crystal clear. The song was directly inspired by Hicks's famous routine about Los Angeles sinking into the ocean, Arizona Bay. They reimagined it as this necessary societal cleansing, flushing away all the hypocrisy, the superficiality. It won them their first Grammy for Best Metal Performance. A huge moment.
And Third Eye, the epic 13-minute closer. That feels like the culmination.
It really does. It opens with samples of Bill Hicks himself talking about consciousness expansion, the media's role, serving as a direct tribute to him. Musically, it's this incredibly amazing journey exploring themes of spiritual awakening, higher consciousness. It serves as a powerful, sprawling conclusion to all the ideas explored throughout the album.
That connection with Bill Hicks clearly ran incredibly deep for them.
It was profound. Hicks passed away in February 1994, relatively young, and it deeply impacted Maynard especially. Ænima, the album, is dedicated to him. Those samples on Third Eye, the core concept of Ænima, borrowing from Hicks's routine, those are explicit tributes. But more fundamentally, Hicks's whole attitude, anti-establishment, questioning authority, rejecting hypocrisy, searching for authenticity, it resonated completely with the band's own philosophy. It just permeated the entire album's thematic core.
And Ænima wasn't just critically acclaimed, it was a massive commercial triumph for them.
A huge leap forward from Undertow. Debuted at #2 on the Billboard chart, sold something like 148,000 copies in its first week alone. Went on to sell over 3 million copies, triple platinum, which was, again, remarkable for an album with such challenging, complex material and structure. Critics universally praised the musical growth, the conceptual unity, the ambitious scope, how they managed to balance these really experimental elements with genuine accessibility. Rolling Stone called it a sprawling inner cosmos. Spin highlighted its mathematical precision married to primal power. It absolutely cemented their status as one of the most important and unique rock bands of the 90s.
The visual identity also evolved significantly with this album, right? They started working with new collaborators for the art.
Yes, while the really famous Alex Grey collaboration comes a bit later for Ænima, Adam Jones worked extensively with artist Cam de Leon. And you see that shift in the artwork immediately. That pulsating eyeball imagery is iconic. The CD booklet was incredibly intricate, disturbing images, medical illustrations, surreal collages, all meticulously designed to complement the music. And those hidden elements in the liner notes, bizarre little essays on things like lacrimology and ritual magic, just added another layer to the band's carefully cultivated mystique. They even had different artwork for the vinyl edition, encouraging fans to seek out multiple versions. It really showed how integral the visual experience was to the whole package.
And the philosophical explorations on Ænima felt much deeper, more overt than before.
They really leaned into it, didn't they? Jungian psychology, especially with 46 and 2, sacred geometry, drawing from Danny's long-standing interest in that, ideas about evolutionary consciousness, sharp media criticism in tracks like Ænima and Hooker, and that thread of spiritual awakening, especially in Third Eye. This intellectual dimension became a massive draw for listeners who were looking for more than just, angry rock music. They wanted something that engaged their minds too.
The band dynamic, now with Justin fully integrated, also seemed to hit a completely new level.
It just clicked. The collaborative writing process really solidified. Each member contributed equally during those extensive jam sessions that formed the basis of the songs. Danny and Justin developed this almost telepathic rhythmic connection, providing this incredibly complex yet somehow rock-solid foundation. Adam's guitar work became even more textural, serving the overall atmosphere of the song rather than just focusing on solos. And Maynard's shift, performing from the back or side of the stage, often elevated, physically symbolized the idea of the band as a collective unit, not just a traditional frontman-led group. That pattern of patient perfectionism, taking all the time they needed to refine every single detail, was fully established by now and yielded incredibly powerful results.
So by the end of 97, maybe 98, they weren't just a successful band, they were a truly unique force in music.
Absolutely. They had it all, in a way. Artistic credibility, widespread critical acclaim, massive commercial success, and this deeply devoted audience built entirely on substance and challenging norms. They proved definitively that an uncompromising artistic vision could succeed entirely on its own terms. They were already influencing a new generation of bands and setting an incredibly high standard not just for others, but for themselves.
So what happens after reaching that kind of monumental peak? You'd think they'd just ride that wave, keep the momentum going, right?
Hmm.
But our next segment, Navigating the Static Hiatus and Side Paths, covering 1997 to 2000, tells a very different story.
Yeah, success, unfortunately, often brings complications, and this is where the infamous legal battles began, significantly disrupting their momentum right when it should have been highest. In late 1997, their label, Volcano Entertainment, which had actually acquired their original label, Zoo, sued them.
Sued the band. Why?
Volcano claimed the band was violating their contract because they were apparently exploring offers from other labels, trying to shop around.
And the band's response.
They countersued immediately. Their argument was that Volcano had failed to exercise a renewal option in their contract properly, which, in their view, should have made them free agents. This created this legal stalemate, this deadlock, that essentially prevented them from releasing any new music for years. It was incredibly stressful and put all recording plans completely on hold.
And this dragged on for quite a while, didn't it?
Yeah, through pretty much all of 1998. Finally, in December 1998, they reached an out-of-court settlement. It resulted in a new 3-record joint venture deal between the band and the label, so it secured their future eventually, but the significant amount of time lost definitely disrupted their creative flow. It forced them to approach writing their next album with a totally fresh perspective, simply because they'd been away from the Ænima material and momentum for so long.
And there were more legal issues even after that, this time with their management.
Right. Just another headache. In 2000, while they were trying to regroup creatively and get back on track, they dismissed their longtime manager, Ted Gardner. This, unfortunately, led to further litigation over commission payments. Just another layer of distraction and complication right when they were trying to focus back on making music.
But this period of forced hiatus wasn't exactly creatively dormant for the individual members, was it? This is when the side projects really started to flourish.
Exactly. The legal mess prevented them from working on official Tool material, but it kind of freed them up, maybe even pushed them to pursue other creative outlets. The most prominent one, of course, was Maynard James Keenan forming a perfect circle with his guitar tech, Billy Howardell, in 1999.
Which has a notably different sound from Tool, much more immediate maybe.
Oh yeah, significantly different, much more melodic, more accessible arrangements, more direct lyrical themes compared to Tool's dense layers and complexity. And their debut album, Mer de Noms, released in May 2000, was an immediate, massive success. Debuted at #4 on the Billboard chart. A Perfect Circle toured extensively in the early 2000s, which definitely led to a lot of speculation among fans about where Maynard's primary focus really lay.
Though he always maintained publicly he could juggle both bands.
He did, consistently. But it's undeniable that his heavy commitment to A Perfect Circle during that period was a factor in the eventual delay for the next Tool album. The other members kept busy too, though. Adam Jones continued his visual art and side projects, collaborating with people like Buzz Osborne from the Meldons. Danny Carey dove even deeper into his jazz and experimental drumming, playing with projects like Pigface, Zaum, Volto, and even circling back to work with Carole King again. Justin Chancellor also pursued personal projects and collaborated with various musicians in the LA scene.
So while they weren't working on Tool specifically, they were all expanding their musical palettes, maybe bringing new influences back into the fold eventually.
Precisely. These side ventures allowed them to explore different musical ideas, keep their creative muscles flexed, keep their skills sharp, and ultimately, enriching what they would each bring back to the Tool writing process when the time came.
So by late 2000, with the major legal battles mostly resolved, they finally started focusing seriously on the next Tool album.
And the anticipation among fans was just immense by this point. It had been 4 long years since Ænima. The forced break, in a strange way, almost seemed to fuel their ambition even higher. They'd had more time to let incredibly complex ideas percolate. They brought back producer David Bottrill, who had done such a great job capturing the sound of Ænima.
And the recording process itself, as you'd expect by now, was meticulous.
Months and months spent at various studios in LA Larrabee Cello Studios, refining every arrangement, exploring every sonic possibility. The writing process for this album was described by the band as being even more collaborative than before, stemming from these extensive jam sessions where all 4 members contributed ideas equally, followed by intense rehearsal to hone the incredibly complex structures they were coming up with.
This whole period really seems like a crucial turning point, doesn't it? It demonstrated incredible resilience.
It absolutely was. It was crucial. They overcame significant legal hurdles, professional obstacles, things that could have easily derailed a lesser band. The challenges seemed to almost clarify their priorities, solidifying their commitment to their core artistic values. Instead of being thrown off course by the hiatus, they used that break to conceive what would become their most ambitious album yet. And that prolonged absence, it actually heightened anticipation, making the eventual release feel like a major cultural event, especially in an era where content was starting to speed up and become more disposable. They made a conscious, definitive choice: quality and conceptual depth over speed and market demands. This period really set the template for the rest of their career. They emerged unified, focused, and ready to create Lateralus.
Which brings us right to our next chapter, the spiral out to the Lateralus peak, covering 2001 to 2002. Almost 5 years after Ænima, Lateralus finally arrives on May 15, 2001.
And it immediately announced itself as their most ambitious, most cohesive work to date, pushing even further into that progressive rock and spiritual territory they'd hinted at. The title itself, Lateralus, is deeply significant. Maynard explained it relates partly to the lateralis muscle in the thigh, but more importantly to the concept of lateral thinking. Transcending conventional ways of thinking, pushing boundaries, spiraling outwards to gain new perspectives. That became the central theme.
The album feels less like just a collection of songs and much more like a single unified statement, doesn't it?
That was absolutely intentional. The tracks are meticulously arranged to flow together, with really careful transitions between them. It rewards listening from front to back as one complete journey. And musically, it was their most complex work up to that point, without question. Full of unusual time signatures, incredibly intricate polyrhythms, extended song lengths, many pushing past 9 or 10 minutes. The whole album runs nearly 79 minutes, filling the CD format.
And the recording process was famously, almost legendarily meticulous.
Oh yeah. Months were spent just refining the compositions, the arrangements, before they even stepped into the studio proper. They brought back David Bottrill as producer and recorded primarily at Cello Studios in Hollywood, a place known for its great acoustics and vintage gear. They blended cutting-edge digital tech with traditional analog methods, using dozens of microphones on Danny's massive drum kit, exploring countless amp and effects setups for Justin's bass and Adam's guitar textures. Maynard often recorded his vocals after the instrumental tracks were largely complete, allowing him to react organically to the fully formed music.
And this is the album where the incorporation of mathematics and mystical concepts becomes really prominent, almost a signature element of their approach.
Yes, absolutely. It becomes much more explicit here. The most famous example, of course, is in the title track, Lateralus. They famously use the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on, to structure the rhythm, and even more specifically, the syllable patterns in the verses.
The syllables actually follow this sequence.
Yeah. The number of syllables per line follows the pattern. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, then back down. 5, 3, 2, 1, 1. And the time signature itself is constantly changing, cycling through 98, 88, and 78, 987, right? Like the 16th number in the Fibonacci sequence if you start differently. It creates this feeling of natural, organic unfolding, perfectly mirroring the song's theme of growth and outward expansion.
And Danny Carey's long-standing interest in sacred geometry comes through, too.
It's woven throughout the album. You hear it in his complex drum patterns. You see it in the geometric layout of his massive kit. He views geometry as this fundamental structure linking the physical and spiritual worlds, a kind of universal language. The number 7 also recurs prominently throughout the album. There are 7 main tracks framed by interludes, references to 7-note scales, visual imagery hinting at the 7 chakras in the artwork. These weren't just random choices. They held deep symbolic weight for the band.
But it's crucial to point out, these complex structures weren't just intellectual exercises, were they? They weren't just showing off their math skills.
That's the absolute key point. They weren't using math just for the sake of complexity. These patterns, these structures, they served the emotional and spiritual content of the music. They created a sense of flow, symmetry, and resonance that felt inherently right for the themes being explored. It added layers of meaning and rewarded listeners who wanted to dig deeper, even if you couldn't consciously sit there and count Fibonacci numbers while listening. It just felt structured, intentional.
Lyrically, Lateralus is often described as Maynard's most explicitly spiritual writing up to that point in their career.
Yeah, it felt like a shift. It moved beyond the deconstruction and critique found on earlier albums and started exploring what comes after that. The process of rebuilding consciousness, seeking enlightenment, finding connection, The Grudge, opens the album with that powerful theme of releasing anger, resentment. That repeated mantra of let go, let go, let go, and Maynard's famously long, sustained scream in that song, it represents this visceral, cathartic release. It sets the tone. The patient explores patience not just as a passive virtue, but as an active spiritual practice, a way of enduring difficulties and consciously waiting for understanding or resolution.
Schism feels very much about disconnection, breakdown.
It uses these great geological metaphors, cracks, faults, to describe breakdowns in communication, especially within relationships. That famous line, I know the pieces fit because I watched them fall away. It's about acknowledging the brokenness, seeing the separation as the necessary first step towards any kind of healing or reconnection. And then you have parable and parabola, this incredible two-part journey.
Right, the quiet intro into the explosion.
Exactly. Parabole is this quiet, meditative prelude, building tension before parabola erupts. And parabola is this powerful celebration of existence, of consciousness, right here, right now, in the face of impermanence. Lines like, this body holding me, be my reminder here that I am not alone, and embrace this moment, remember we are eternal, all this pain is an illusion. It's a profound statement about finding divinity in the present moment.
Picks and Leeches provides a really sharp, aggressive contrast after that more transcendent piece.
It absolutely does. It snaps you back. It's raw, angry, dealing with parasitic relationships, energy vampires, expressing a kind of righteous, necessary anger at exploitation and those who feed off others. And then Lateralus, the title track, the conceptual centerpiece.
Just spiral out. Keep going.
That's the mantra, isn't it? It's all about expanded awareness, creative thinking, embracing that spiral pattern of growth and evolution rather than staying static or linear. It's become a core philosophy for so many fans.
Disposition feels like a moment of calm acceptance after all that intensity.
It serves as this beautiful, calm bridge, a moment of acceptance, maybe surrender, leading into reflection, which is this sprawling, atmospheric instrumental. It really features Danny's distinctive, almost tribal drumming style, creates this wide open space for introspection, contemplation. And Triad is the final instrumental closer, heavy, complex, built around patterns of three. It feels like a kind of integration, a musical and spiritual culmination of the entire album's journey, resolving in these intricate polyrhythms.
And the visual synergy on this album with the artist Alex Grey is just perfect, isn't it? It feels inseparable from the music.
This is where that long-standing, iconic collaboration with visionary artist Alex Grey truly began and became central. His incredibly detailed anatomical and spiritual paintings depicting human energy systems, chakras, altered states of consciousness, they were just a perfect visual counterpart to the album's complex themes. The visual art and the music created this truly unified, multi-layered experience. It rewarded repeated engagement, studying the artwork while listening. Their commitment to high-quality, integral artwork was absolute, making the physical album itself a treasured piece of art.
Commercially and critically, Lateralus was absolutely massive for them, bigger than Ænima.
Huge. It debuted straight at #1 on the Billboard chart, selling over 555,000 copies in its first week alone. Went on to become double platinum. This was absolutely remarkable for an album that was so musically complex, so conceptually demanding. It proved definitively that there was a massive audience out there hungry for substance, willing to put in the effort to engage with challenging art. Critics universally praised its ambitious scope, the seamless integration of all the musical, lyrical, and visual elements, and how it managed to balance that mind-bending complexity with genuine emotional impact. Rolling Stone called it a sprawling inner cosmos. Spin highlighted its mathematical precision married to primal power. It cemented their legacy as undisputed leaders in progressive rock.
The Schism music video also had a huge impact, didn't it? Won a Grammy?
Yeah, directed again by Adam Jones, using that intricate, painstaking stop-motion animation style. It visualized the themes of separation and connection from the song in this really haunting, unforgettable way. It received significant airplay on MTV and really stood out as one of the last truly complex artistic music videos to get that kind of mainstream exposure before the rise of YouTube and streaming completely changed the video landscape. Winning the Grammy for Best Music Video in 2002 was a significant validation of their highly artistic, non-conventional approach to visuals. It showed their patient, uncompromising method yielded long-term benefits.
And their live show evolved dramatically during this era as well, becoming much more visual.
They debuted their most sophisticated staging yet. Elaborate lighting setups, immersive video screens playing abstract visuals, and sometimes clips related to the songs, complex visual effects, creating a truly immersive environment for the audience, trying to replicate that album experience live. Maynard's distinctive stage positioning, often elevated at the back or side of the stage, continued, maybe even became more pronounced, emphasizing the collective band experience over a traditional frontman focus. And the technical precision required to reproduce those incredibly complex Lateralus arrangements live. It reached astonishing new heights after years and years of playing together. Set lists became these carefully crafted journeys through their evolving catalog.
By 2002, they were clearly recognized not just as a band, but as genuine innovators.
Absolutely. They were successfully combining this intense, progressive musical complexity with a surprising level of emotional accessibility and resonance. They were influencing a whole new wave of bands across multiple genres. They proved, again, that an uncompromising artistic vision could achieve massive commercial success entirely on its own terms. Lateralus really stands as a stunning culmination of their first decade, showcasing how dramatically they could evolve while always maintaining their core identity.
Which brings us inevitably to our next segment. Facing the Fire, 10,000 Days in Personal Depths, covering roughly 2006 to 2009. And of course, another significant break followed the Lateralus tour cycle.
Nearly 5 years this time between albums. While the previous gap had the legal battles as a major factor, this break felt partly intentional, allowing time to decompress, avoid the pressure to rush straight back into the studio after such a monumental album, and of course side projects continued to be very active during this period.
Maynard especially seemed incredibly busy outside of Tool.
He really was. A Perfect Circle released 13th Step in 2003, and the Covers album Emotive in 2004. He also officially launched his other major side project, Pussifer, which was even more experimental and electronic. And on top of all that, he was seriously developing his vineyard and wine business, Caduceus Cellars, out in Arizona. Danny Carey continued his jazz and world music explorations with Volto and collaborated with numerous other artists. Adam Jones pursued visual arts and film work. Justin Chancellor worked on his own projects and really delved deeper into advanced bass studies.
So these parallel ventures continued to be really important creative outlets for all of them.
They absolutely did. They allowed the members to keep creating, explore different musical spaces, prevent any kind of stagnation, and ultimately bring fresh perspectives and new influences back to the Tool dynamic when they finally did reconvene to write again.
And writing and recording for 10,000 Days was apparently described as particularly challenging, maybe even more so than Lateralus.
Yeah, it sounds like it. After the huge success and perceived complexity of Lateralus, they apparently set even higher internal standards for themselves. The collaborative writing process, which started in late 2004, reportedly took even more time as they developed increasingly intricate and layered ideas. This time, they decided to work with producer Joe Barresi.
Known for Queens of the Stone Age, Chevelle. A different kind of sound.
Exactly. Bringing in a fresh perspective, maybe aiming for a slightly different sonic texture. Recording took place over many months at multiple studios in LA, just meticulously refining every single arrangement, exploring a vast range of sonic possibilities. The writing was described as incredibly collaborative, maybe more than ever, heavily based on those extended jam sessions, followed by intense rehearsal periods to absolutely nail down the complex structures they were building.
The album concept entitled For 10,000 Days are incredibly personal, aren't they? Central to the album's whole emotional landscape.
Deeply personal. The album was released April 28, 2006. The title, 10,000 Days, refers quite directly to approximately 10,000 days, which is roughly 27 years, the duration that Maynard's mother, Judith Marie, lived with debilitating complications from a stroke, often misreported as MS, before her death in 2003. This profound personal loss deeply, profoundly influenced the album's emotional content. It brought a raw vulnerability and a level of direct reflection into the lyrics that felt new for Tool, despite the continuing musical complexity. The themes explored revolved heavily around faith, suffering, mortality, loss, grief, and ultimately transcendence.
The source material we have provides an extensive lyrical deep dive into this album, highlighting just how personal and incredibly detailed the writing is, particularly concerning his mother. Let's really lean into that detail because it's core to understanding this record.
Absolutely. It's essential. Vicarious opens the album, but it's actually a sharp critique of modern society's almost voyeuristic consumption of violence and tragedy through media. That line, I need to watch things die from a distance, or I own the TV because tragedy thrills me. It just nails that feeling of detached numbness. It explores how we, maybe subconsciously, feed off misfortune to feel a sense of security. It even references hidden newscasters buried in the soundscape. It takes a pretty dark view of human nature, suggesting we're almost programmed to feed off hostility, which feels like a stark contrast to some of the later songs on the album, actually.
Then you get to Jambi, named after the genie from Pee-wee's Playhouse, oddly enough.
This track appears to be the first direct lyrical reference to his mother on the album. He describes sitting at the top of the King's Mountain, having achieved success, but realizing none of it feels worth the loss of this loved one. He expresses this gut-wrenching willingness to trade all of it, the fame, the fortune, for just one more day with her. He talks about a period of deep depression and being saved by this unnamed person, clearly his mother, and saying he'd trade even that salvation, that lifeline, for more time. The bridge, shined down, damn my eyes if they should compromise our fulcrum, suggests this desperate longing for wholeness, for reunion, for that foundational support she provided. It's incredibly vulnerable.
And then you have the absolute emotional core, the centerpiece of the entire album, the two-part, 17-minute epic, Wings for Marie and 10,000 Days Wings for Two, a direct tribute to his mother's decades-long struggle.
These are widely and rightly considered some of the most heartbreaking and profound songs in their entire catalog. In part one, Wings for Marie, Maynard is described as speaking directly to his mother, almost like a conversation or a bedside vigil. He sings, you believed in movements none could see," acknowledging how her unwavering faith allowed her to perceive something vital in him, something good that perhaps others couldn't, even when he himself didn't share her specific Christian beliefs. He describes her as passionate, uncompromised, a light, until the illness took hold and immobilized her. He talks about the agony of watching her physical and mental breakdown and notes very pointedly, "It was you who prayed for me, not the other way around." He questions if he is even worthy of being the son of someone he sees as so pure, essentially an angel enduring hell on earth. Part one ends implicitly with her passing, and he describes the act of writing her eulogy, stating she never told a lie, but surely saved one, him.
Part two, 10,000 Days, seems to get into his more complicated feelings, particularly about her faith and how others reacted to her suffering and death.
It does. His deep resentment towards organized religion, or at least the perceived hypocrisy of many of its followers, becomes very clear here. He expresses intense frustration with churchgoers who might claim to understand suffering, but, in his view, haven't endured anything remotely close to what his mother went through for 27 years. He felt a profound disconnect, bordering on anger, at what he saw as false sympathy or hollow platitudes offered at her funeral. He labels those acting out of perceived obligation or social pressure, the collective Judas, betraying the core teachings of empathy and compassion they claim to follow by their lack of genuine understanding for her specific, immense suffering. He sees his mother's unwavering faith through her misery as eclipsing theirs entirely, earning her place at heaven's gates. 10,000 days in the fire is long enough, you're going home.
He describes his mother using incredibly powerful, almost biblical language himself, doesn't he?
Yeah, comparing her to Jesus, calling her the light and the way, and this is a key insight from the sources. Even though Maynard himself has always expressed skepticism, maybe even antagonism, towards organized religion and the Christian God specifically, witnessing his mother's profound, unwavering faith through nearly 3 decades of agonizing suffering deeply shook his own lack of belief. Her faith became, for him, the burden of proof, this undeniable, tangible manifestation of something profound, something beyond purely rational explanation, that he couldn't ignore even if he couldn't embrace it himself. The song concludes with those incredibly moving, powerful final words delivered directly to his departed mother. "Set as I am in my ways and my arrogance, burden of proof tossed upon the believers, you are my witness, my eyes, my evidence, Judith Murray, unconditional one. Fetch me the Spirit, the Son, and the Father. Tell them their pillar of faith has ascended. It's time now, my time now. Give me my wings." It's this complex, swirling storm of grief, anger, profound respect, doubt, love, and a lingering, painful questioning of the divine, all filtered through the raw lens of intense personal loss. Just staggering.
Wow. After such an emotionally devastating piece, The Pot feels like a deliberate shift back towards social commentary, almost like needing to change the subject.
It definitely feels like that. It snaps back to a more external focus. It's a biting commentary on government corruption and hypocrisy, specifically targeting drug policy. It's reported to be based on a specific story about a judge who routinely sentenced marijuana offenders to jail while himself being a user of hard drugs like heroin. It blends that raw, aggressive energy from their earlier work with a more mature, focused critique of hypocrisy and a call to recognize it in positions of power and maybe act against it.
Rosetta Stone is another massive, sprawling, complex composition on this album. Very different vibe.
Totally different. Over 11 minutes long, with multiple distinct movements, tempo shifts, feels like a mini opera. The title is obviously a play on the Rosetta Stone, the key to deciphering ancient languages, implying here that the key to understanding something profound, maybe human evolution, maybe the nature of consciousness, might actually be found through psychedelics. The song narrates this bizarre, rambling stream of consciousness story of an intense LSD DMT trip, possibly involving Area 51, alien abduction, being told he's the chosen one with a message of hope and warning for mankind. And then the frustrating, darkly comedic punchline. He forgot to bring a pen, so he can't remember the crucial message. It perfectly captures that feeling of grasping something immense and profound under the influence, only to have it frustratingly slip away. It opens with that now iconic, instantly recognizable spoken word intro. Alrighty then, picture this, if you will.
Intention seems to present a really different perspective on human nature compared to the opening track, Vicarious. Almost the opposite.
It appears to, yeah. While Vicarious suggests a darker, perhaps inherently flawed human nature programmed for hostility and voyeurism, Intention seems to explore the roots of corruption from a different angle. It argues, or at least explores the idea, that humans were perhaps born good, innocent, but were corrupted over time by the development of greed, selfishness, the concept of possession. It suggests that in a hypothetical Stone Age, maybe there was no greed because there was no concept of ownership, but once people started claiming things, the need to protect them arose, strangers became potential enemies, and greed took root. The fire metaphor is used fire as a pure, essential tool for warmth, and survival became weaponized for selfish control. It concludes with this idea of returning to our original state, the state of no desire, as we were when born and as we are when we die. A very different take.
And then Right Into serves as the album's closer before that long 13-year gap. It feels like a final heavy message from the band.
It's arguably the most lyrically intense and maybe pessimistic track on the album, and yeah, it feels like the band's final, powerful statement before their longest hiatus. It's written from the perspective of angels looking down on humanity, questioning why humans were given the gifts of free will and consciousness, only to immediately use them to fight, kill, divide, and destroy each other. The lyrics lament that there's more than enough to go around. The universe isn't finite in the way we act. The title references the biblical story of King Solomon, where the true mother would give up her claim to the baby rather than see it cut in half to be divided. The song implies that humanity is like the false mother, prioritizing owning or destroying something over sharing or preserving life. The angels just can't understand when the fighting will ever end, suggesting maybe it never will.
And that one line, repugnant as a creature, is just devastating.
Repugnant is a creature who would squander the ability to lift an eye to heaven, conscious of his fleeting time here. It's incredibly poignant, isn't it? It perfectly captures the core theme. We possess this immense, precious gift of consciousness, the ability to perceive beauty, to understand our place in the cosmos, to appreciate our brief time here. Yet we squander that capacity on harming each other, on division, on losing our unity, endlessly running out of things to divide. It's a powerful, somber, and deeply critical conclusion to the album's journey.
Then there's that brief, mysterious final track, Vicinti Tres.
Yeah, which is just Latin for 23. There are no official lyrics available on streaming platforms, but Latin lyrics do exist in the physical packaging for some versions. They reportedly reference a quote attributed to Nostradamus about the end times, the coming of the Antichrist, and 23 steps to total power. The specific meaning of the number 23 within the context of the album is left deliberately ambiguous, adding this final layer of mystery, numerology, and maybe unease to end such a deeply personal and emotionally complex record.
Musically, 10,000 Days was arguably their most intricate set of compositions yet, wasn't it? Pushing complexity even further.
Oh, definitely. Songs like Rosetta Stone or Right Into are incredibly complex, multi-movement pieces with constantly shifting dynamics. Justin's bass playing reached new levels of sophistication, providing not just rhythmic grounding, but complex melodic counterpoints. Danny's drumming incorporated even more elements from jazz, world music, progressive rock, creating these dense, interlocking, polyrhythmic layers that were absolutely central to the album's sound. And Adam's guitar work continued its evolution towards incredibly textural playing, mastering effects and studio techniques to perfectly serve the emotional landscape of each song.
And Joe Barezi's production brought a different sonic quality than Bottrell's work on the previous two albums.
It did. It added maybe a layer of raw power, but also incredible clarity, especially considering the density of the arrangements. You hear all those subtle elements, the ambient passages, the acoustic textures, the intricate percussion layers. Sound design became even more important for the album's flow and emotional impact. They managed to capture a real sense of live energy while simultaneously allowing for incredibly complex studio layers and overdubs. A real balancing act.
The innovative packaging for the physical album was also a major talking point, maybe even more elaborate than Lateralus.
Absolutely. Designed again by Adam Jones, this time collaborating more with Mackie Osborne. The CD case itself incorporated stereoscopic lenses built right into the packaging, which you use to view these incredible 3D images included in the booklet. It wasn't just packaging, it was an interactive art piece. It revealed hidden details, different perspectives within the artwork when viewed correctly. It was another bold statement about the value of physical media as something to be explored and experienced, rewarding the dedicated fan who bought the actual album. The artwork itself incorporated religious, anatomical, and spiritual imagery tied directly to the album's heavy themes.
Commercially and critically, despite the 5-year wait and the heavy subject matter, it was another massive success for them.
Huge. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard chart again, and actually sold even more in its first week than Lateralus did, something like 564,000 copies. Just staggering numbers. It proved their continued viability and their growing, incredibly loyal audience, despite the long waits and the increasingly challenging nature of their material. Critics widely praised its emotional depth, its musical sophistication, and how successfully it integrated such intensely personal content into their established complex sound. The balance between the technical and the emotional was often highlighted, and they won another Grammy, this time for Best Recording Package, further validating their unique art-focused approach to the entire album experience.
And the live shows supporting 10,000 Days became even more theatrical, more visually immersive.
They've really deployed their most elaborate production up to that point. Massive video screens displaying complex, often disturbing or psychedelic visuals, intricate lighting rigs, sophisticated visual effects, all designed to create these incredibly immersive environments for the audience. Maynard's stage presence evolved further too, sometimes incorporating costumes, makeup, wigs, transforming into different characters that seemed to complement the songs, while still maintaining that overall focus on the collective band rather than just himself. And the technical precision required to reproduce these incredibly complex arrangements live. It was just breathtaking after decades of playing together. Setlists continued to be carefully curated journeys, weaving the new, emotionally heavy material into their whole catalog.
So by 2009, after this album cycle, their legacy seemed truly solidified as something unique in modern music.
Undeniably, they had established themselves as true innovators, somehow remaining incredibly relevant and influential across multiple decades of changing musical trends. Their patient, deliberate development process was clearly paying off, building this dedicated, multi-generational following that valued quality and substance over speed and disposability. Their influence was undeniable, particularly in progressive metal and alternative rock. They stood as this powerful model for maintaining absolute artistic integrity while achieving massive commercial success, representing increasingly rare values in the music industry: patience, craftsmanship, quality over quantity.
Which leads us finally to the most recent era. Patience rewarded Fear Inoculum in the present, starting really around 2019. This period began, of course, with the longest wait of all.
A staggering 13-year hiatus after the 10,000 Days tour wrapped up. 13 years. It was unprecedented, even for them, and it truly tested the patience of even their most devoted fans. Multiple factors contributed to this one. There were reports of ongoing, complex legal disputes, this time seemingly over insurance related to band member health issues affecting recording. There was, as always, their infamous perfectionism, refusing to release anything until they felt it was absolutely ready. And of course, the continued focus on side projects kept everyone busy.
Maynard especially remained prolific outside Tool.
Incredibly so. A Perfect Circle released Eat the Elephant in 2018 after a long gap themselves. Pussifer released several albums and EPs during that time. His wine business continued to grow. The other members also pursued their own interests, continued refining their skills, played on other projects, but the Tool engine was quiet.
Fans were absolutely desperate for any sign of new music, weren't they? Scrutinizing every interview, every cryptic social media post.
Oh, totally. The anticipation became almost a defining characteristic of their relationship with the fan base during that decade plus. They occasionally teased fans by premiering new instrumental sections or even full songs live, like Descending and Invincible, during tours in the years leading up to the album's announcement. which of course only built the anticipation even higher. The sheer duration of the wait became part of the band's mythology, a testament to fan loyalty.
And then, a really significant decision that signaled something was finally changing. August 2019, they embraced streaming platforms after years and years of resistance.
This was huge. A massive shift for a band that had so long championed the physical album as the complete artistic package and actively resisted digital distribution models. But they finally released their entire back catalog onto all major streaming platforms in August 2019. The response was immediate and overwhelming. It proved their enduring popularity wasn't just nostalgia. Older albums like Ænima and Lateralus immediately shot right back into the Billboard Top 10, decades after their original release. It showed they could adapt to the radically changed music landscape while still maintaining their core identity, and that their massive audience was right there, ready and waiting.
And then finally,
Yeah.
after 13 long years, Fear Inoculum arrived on August 30, 2019.
And the impact was immediate. Debuted straight at #1 on the Billboard chart, selling something like 270,000 equivalent album units in just its first 3 days of release. The album continued their clear trajectory towards longer, even more complex song structures. Most tracks are well over 10 minutes long, with the title track exceeding 15 minutes. This demonstrated an incredible confidence in their audience's willingness to engage deeply with demanding, extended pieces of music. The music itself incorporated subtle influences from their various side projects over the years, but it was unmistakably, undeniably Tool, featuring perhaps their clearest, most intricate, most hi-fi production sound yet.
Let's dive into the tracks on Fear Inoculum, the first new Tool music in 13 years.
The 15-minute title track, Fear Inoculum, really sets the stage thematically. The lyrics explore this core idea inoculation against fear itself, suggesting that through measured, conscious exposure to the things you fear, you can gradually build immunity. It delves into how fear can be both protective and profoundly limiting, and the extended, slowly building structure of the song mirrors that process of gradually confronting and overcoming fear. Pneuma draws its name from the ancient Greek concept of pneuma, meaning breath, but also spirit or soul.
Right, the life force.
Exactly. It explores consciousness, the connection between the physical act of breathing and the universal consciousness or spirit. It features some of Danny Carey's most incredibly complex polyrhythms, which some have interpreted as representing the intricate fractal patterns of breath connecting us to something larger than ourselves.
Invincible feels very much like the band reflecting on their own journey, their own aging and longevity in the music world.
It definitely has that feeling, doesn't it? It's a powerful reflection on aging and mortality, presented almost from the perspective of experienced warriors returning to the battlefield one more time. The lyrics acknowledge physical decline, warriors struggling to remain relevant, lurching into the fray, weapon out and belly in, but also celebrate the wisdom, the resilience gained through decades of struggle, long in tooth and soul. It feels both deeply personal to the band members themselves and also universally relatable to anyone facing their own aging process. Descending, which they had premiered live years earlier, tackles themes of climate change, societal decay, environmental destruction, using apocalyptic imagery and building tension throughout its long, evolving structure, questioning humanity's role and complacency.
What about Culling Voices? That one feels more internal.
It does seem to explore internal struggles, specifically the battle against negative self-talk, self-doubt, destructive criticism, whether internal or external. It feels like it's about the difficult process of distinguishing between genuine intuition or guidance and those harmful parasitic voices inside your head, and the need to consciously cull or silence those voices that don't serve your growth or well-being. Chocolate Chip Trip is essentially Danny Carey's extended percussion showcase on the album. An instrumental track built around a complex drum solo, incorporating electronic elements and synthesizers. It was definitely a point of debate among fans. Some saw it as indulgent, maybe breaking the album's flow. Others saw it as a mind-blowing demonstration of sheer rhythmic mastery. It certainly serves as a kind of intense rhythmic palate cleanser mid-album.
And 7 the almost 16-minute closer that won them another Grammy. That feels like a statement piece.
Oh, absolutely. The title itself is a play on tempest, meaning a violent storm, but with the number 7 embedded 7-empest, adding that layer of biblical or symbolic context related to completion, judgment, maybe divine intervention. The lyrics appear to tackle themes of political manipulation, the divisive power of media, the spread of misinformation, and the resulting societal chaos. Adam Jones's intricate, virtuosic guitar work is really front and center throughout its many sections, and the extended, turbulent structure mirrors the chaos and intensity described in the lyrics. It's a huge, powerful track.
And the album ends with a brief closing piece, Mocking Beat.
Yeah, a short, atmospheric instrumental track. It functions as a gentle come down after the sheer intensity and length of Seven Tempest, provides a sense of resolution, brings things back down to earth a bit, and helps maintain the album's overall cohesive, atmospheric flow right to the very end.
Reception to Fear Inoculum was generally widespread acclaim, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It seemed like most people felt it justified that incredibly long, agonizing wait.
it absolutely did, for the most part. Critics largely praised the album for successfully returning after such a monumental absence, noting that the band's patient, meticulous development process had clearly paid off again in terms of musical sophistication, depth, and sonic quality. The Grammy win for Seven Tempest for Best Metal Performance added another major accolade to their already impressive collection. The album proved their continued relevance in dramatically changed music landscape and their unique ability to command a massive audience despite minimal conventional promotion and releasing incredibly challenging, lengthy material. It was a phenomenon.
And the tour supporting Fear Inoculum, when it finally happened around the pandemic disruptions, was reportedly their most elaborate production to date.
Building even further on their established reputation for stunning, immersive live shows. Massive, high-resolution video screens displaying intricate, often Alex Grey-inspired visuals, incredibly sophisticated lighting rigs, state-of-the-art laser effects, all creating these stunning, almost overwhelming sensory environments that perfectly complemented the dense, atmospheric music. The band's technical precision was, if anything, at an all-time high after decades of playing together, allowing them to navigate the incredibly complex new material live while still maintaining the crucial emotional impact. Setlists were carefully balanced, weaving the long new songs into career-spanning journeys that satisfied longtime fans.
So by 2020, maybe 2021, they had achieved something incredibly rare in music, maintaining both artistic credibility and a massive, devoted, multi-generational audience over 30 years.
It's a unique, almost unparalleled position in modern music. Their patient, deliberate approach, while often frustrating for fans waiting for new material, created this unparalleled level of anticipation and event status around their releases that few other artists, if any, could hope to match. They solidified their influence across progressive metal, alternative rock, even art rock, and they continue to serve as this powerful template for how artists can maintain complete artistic integrity while achieving massive mainstream success, representing those increasingly rare values of patience, craftsmanship, and prioritizing quality over quantity above all else.
However, even with that incredible level of fan dedication, those extremely high expectations can sometimes lead to friction, can't they? Which brings us to the recent controversy around the Tool in the Sand festival in March 2025.
Yeah, this definitely caused a bit of a stir, maybe more than a bit, within the dedicated fan base. It was a destination festival event held in the Dominican Republic, and the core issue really revolved around the explicit promise made in the marketing that Tool would perform two unique sets over the 2 nights they headlined. Fans paid a significant premium price for this event, specifically anticipating two distinct, different Tool performances each night.
But that promise of unique sets didn't quite translate to the reality of the shows that were performed.
That seems to be the consensus from those who attended, yeah. While there were differences between the set lists, there was also significant overlap. Key songs, including newer epics like Fear Inoculum and Ænima, but also older favorites like Rosetta Stone and Jambi, were reportedly played on both nights. And adding to the disappointment for some, the second night's set list was even shorter than the first 9 songs compared to 10 on the first night.
And there's audible disappointment from the audience because of this.
Yes, reports from multiple attendees mentioned audible booing coming from some sections of the crowd, particularly when the repeats became apparent during the second night's performance. Now, for a Tool audience, which is typically incredibly respectful, almost reverent, and deeply invested, hearing boos is a very rare occurrence. It really highlights just how high the expectations were based on that specific unique set's promise, particularly given the considerable cost and travel effort involved for fans attending this premium destination festival.
This situation even led to threats of legal action against the promoters, didn't it?
It did. A Georgia lawyer named Stas Rusek, who identified himself as a longtime fan attending his 27th and 28th Tool shows at the festival, publicly announced he was investigating the possibility of filing a class action lawsuit against the festival promoters. His core argument centered on the claim that the explicit marketing promise of two unique sets was a key deciding factor for many fans who spent thousands of dollars on travel, accommodation, and tickets, and that they were fundamentally misled. He acknowledged that some repetition is often expected on a regular tour due to the complexity and physical demands of Tool's music, but argued that the specific marketing for this high-priced special event created a very different and ultimately unmet expectation.
It really underscores the passionate, highly engaged nature of their fan base, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the incredibly high standards the band, and now by extension, anyone associated with putting on their events, are held to by that audience.
It absolutely does. Tool has spent decades building their reputation on delivering exceptional, meticulously crafted experiences, both recorded and live. Any perceived deviation from a specific promise, especially one tied to a premium-priced event, can understandably lead to significant disappointment among that deeply dedicated audience who invests so much emotionally and financially in the band.
But despite that recent controversy, which seemed more aimed at the promoters than the band itself, there are positive signs regarding future music, which is what fans always focus on.
Yes, definitely some exciting news surfaced earlier in 2025. The band reportedly planned to spend a dedicated 3-month period in the studio, specifically focused on organizing ideas for the next album. Now, after the 13-year gap leading up to Fear Inoculum, just hearing about concrete plans for dedicated studio time to work on new material is a significant piece of news that generated considerable excitement and optimism within the fan base.
And they're still being recognized for their significant place in heavy music history.
Yeah, they were scheduled to perform as part of the lineup for Black Sabbath's final farewell show in the summer of 2025. That kind of invitation connects them directly to the very origins of heavy music and highlights their own long-standing, influential legacy within the genre. They certainly face the ongoing challenge of following up a monumental album like Fear Inoculum, but based on their entire history, it seems almost certain they will take exactly the time they deem necessary to evolve the music on their own terms, whenever that next release might eventually surface.
Which brings us finally to our final thoughts: lasting resonance, legacy, and impact. Looking back over this whole deep dive, pulling it all together, what's the overall takeaway about Tool's place in music?
Well, their artistic achievement over more than 3 decades now is just remarkable. They've consistently created ambitious, challenging, and yet incredibly successful work by constantly pushing musical and conceptual boundaries. They've managed that rare feat of balancing intense complexity with genuine emotional accessibility. And they've always created albums that feel like complete experiences integrating music, lyrics, visuals, packaging into one unified artistic statement.
Their musical influence is undeniable, stretching across multiple genres.
Absolutely. You hear echoes of their sound everywhere in rhythmic innovations, harmonic sophistication, the use of dynamic song structures, and countless bands that followed them. Danny Carey's drumming, specifically, has had a profound influence on a whole generation of percussionists across rock, metal, and progressive music. Adam Jones's textural, effects-laden guitar work really expanded the perceived role of the instrument beyond just riffs and solos. And Justin Chancellor's intricate, melodic bass playing redefined what a bassist could contribute within a heavy rock context.
And their cultural impact feels like it goes beyond just the music itself, doesn't it? It's about how they operate.
Totally. They set this powerful example for artists regarding creative control, proving you can achieve massive commercial success without compromising your artistic vision. Their deliberately passionate approach demonstrated that building a lasting career based on quality over quantity is not only possible, but can actually create an unparalleled level of anticipation and enduring relevance. Their willingness to consistently incorporate complex, intellectual, philosophical, and spiritual content elevated the potential for rock music to explore deeper, more meaningful themes.
So what does this all mean for us, for you, the listener, engaging with this band?
Tool occupies this incredibly unique space in modern culture. They are simultaneously sophisticated, demanding serious engagement, yet somehow accessible and resonant to anyone willing to put in the effort. Their influence will undoubtedly endure for decades to come. The template they establish, patient artistic development, deep multimedia integration, and uncompromising vision, and crucially, trusting their audience to meet them halfway, provides a valuable, if challenging, roadmap for future artists navigating an increasingly disposable cultural landscape. Regardless of the controversies, the long delays, or the sometimes overwhelming weight of fan expectations, they continue to operate strictly by their own deeply ingrained principles, prioritizing quality, artistic vision, and that profound, almost symbiotic connection with their audience above all else. They have truly become, maybe like the pneuma they sang about, this vital, breathing force bringing depth, complexity, and meaning into the world of music.
It's quite a remarkable journey, isn't it? From a shared loft space in LA with members of Green Gillo to this unique, revered place in music history. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Tool, guided by the excellent source material you provided.
It's always a rewarding spiral to go down, exploring all those layers, always something new to notice.
Absolutely. And as we spiral out from this deep dive today, maybe consider the immense value artistic, intellectual, perhaps even, dare I say, spiritual, that patience and an uncompromising vision can create. Not just for the artists pouring their life, their time, their energy into the work, but maybe even more so for us, the listeners, who are willing to lean in, to invest our own time and attention, and discover the profound layers that only unfold over time when you truly engage with something complex and meaningful.
Something truly worth pondering in our fast-paced world.
Definitely. And this exploration, this deep dive, was brought to you by blessthiscommunity.com, that longtime fan page dedicated to the world of Tool and A Perfect Circle fans since way, way back in 2001. They're the ones who truly understand that deep connection, that shared patience. You can find hilarious memes, incredible fan art, and just unexpected surprises that celebrate the unique culture around these bands by following them on their social media accounts. You can show your support by becoming a subscriber through their Facebook page. And please visit their website, blessthiscommunity.com, for all your merch needs, Tool and A Perfect Circle concert tickets when they happen, and just a whole lot more that connects you right to the heart of that passionate fan community. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Bless this community.